The door handle bit into her palm as she shoved it downward, throwing her weight against the heavy oak. She stumbled inside, chest heaving, and pressed her back against the wood to force it shut. The lock clicked into place. For 3 blessed seconds, there was only the sound of her own ragged breathing and the muffled orchestra playing somewhere below. She closed her eyes, willing her pulse to slow. Then a voice, low and dry as autumn leaves, cut through the darkness. "I don't recall inviting anyone to join me." Imogen Fairfax's eyes flew open. A man sat in a wingback chair by the dying fire, long legs stretched before him, a glass of whiskey catching the amber light. He was perhaps 30, with dark hair that curled slightly at his temples, and a jaw that could have been carved from granite. He hadn't moved when she'd burst in, hadn't startled. He simply watched her with an expression of detached curiosity, as though women routinely invaded his sanctuary in states of obvious distress. She should apologize. She should leave immediately. She should do anything other than stand here gaping at him like a landed fish. But downstairs, moving through the ballroom with the persistence of a circling shark, was Gervais Montfort. And Imogen would rather face 100 disapproving strangers than spend one more moment in his orbit. "Forgive me," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "I didn't realize this room was occupied." "Clearly." He raised his glass in a mock salute. "The question is whether you intend to continue occupying it yourself." 3 hours earlier, Imogen had stood before her bedroom mirror at Hartwell House, adjusting a gown that had been her mother's before the money ran out. The pale blue silk was still beautiful, though the style was 5 years outdated, and the hem showed signs of careful restitching. At 25, Imogen had long since abandoned dreams of brilliant matches and London seasons. Her father's shipping venture had collapsed when she was 19, transforming the Fairfax family from comfortable gentry into genteel poverty overnight. The creditors had taken nearly everything. They'd kept Hartwell through legal maneuvering and sheer stubbornness, but the house crumbled around them, and their social standing had crumbled with it. Tonight's ball at Pemberton Manor was a rare invitation, extended only because Lady Pemberton had been her mother's school friend. But Imogen hadn't come for dancing or champagne. She'd come because Gervais would be here, and she needed to know if the rumors were true, that he was telling people their broken engagement had been her fault, that she had been the one with secrets to hide. The truth was far uglier, and now he'd found her, and she'd fled like a coward, and she was trapped in a stranger's private study with nowhere left to run. "Well," the man asked, swirling his whiskey, "are you staying or going?" Before she could answer, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Then a voice, smooth and insistent, called her name through the door. "Imogen, I know you're in there. Open the door. We need to talk." Gervais' voice slithered through the oak like poison. Imogen felt her body go rigid, her nails digging crescents into her palms. The man in the chair observed her reaction with sharpening interest. Then, in one fluid motion, he set down his glass and rose to his full height. He was taller than she'd realized, broad-shouldered beneath his impeccably tailored evening coat, with storm-colored eyes that had gone suddenly fierce with intent. "Is that man bothering you?" It wasn't really a question. "He's my former fiancé," Imogen said before she could stop herself. "I have no wish to speak with him." The handle rattled violently. "Imogen, don't be childish. I only want to clear the air between us." Something cold and dangerous settled over the stranger's features. Before Imogen could protest, he crossed the room in 3 strides and wrenched the door open. Gervais Montfort stumbled backward, his golden curls disheveled and his handsome face twisting with surprise. He was everything Imogen had once thought she wanted: charming, well-connected, beautiful in the way of Renaissance angels. She'd learned too late that angels could fall. "Who the devil are you?" Gervais demanded, recovering his composure. The stranger smiled. It wasn't friendly. "I'm the man whose private sanctuary you're currently disturbing." His voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had never needed to raise it. and you are interrupting my conversation with the lady." Gervais peered past him, spotting Imogen in the firelight. His eyes narrowed with possessive fury. "That lady is my concern. We have unfinished business." "Do you?" The stranger glanced back at Imogen. "Do you have unfinished business with this gentleman?" "No." The word came out like a blade. "I have nothing to say to him. Not now. Not ever." "There you have it." The stranger turned back to Gervais with a dismissive shrug. "The lady declines. Good evening." He began to close the door. Gervais' hand shot out to stop it. "Now see here. I don't know who you think you are. Soren Ashcroft." The name landed like a killing blow. "Duke of Rendale. And you have precisely 3 seconds to remove your hand from my door before I remove it for you." The color drained from Gervais's face. Everyone knew the Duke of Rendale, at least by reputation. One of the wealthiest men in England. Notoriously private. Rumored to have ruined men for lesser offenses than touching his property without permission. Gervais released the door and retreated a step. "Your Grace, forgive me. I didn't realize." He attempted a bow, his composure fracturing. "The lady and I were once engaged. I simply wish to discuss." "Were once engaged," Soren repeated flatly. "Past tense, which means her present whereabouts are no longer your concern." He stepped forward, forcing Gervais to retreat further. "The lady is under my protection for the remainder of the evening. If you approach her again, we'll have a very different sort of conversation. Am I clear?" Gervais opened his mouth, closed it, and finally nodded stiffly. "Crystal clear, Your Grace." He disappeared down the corridor without looking back. Soren watched until the footsteps faded entirely. Then he stepped back inside and closed the door with a soft click. When he turned to face Imogen, some of the ice had thawed from his expression. "Under your protection?" she asked, finding her voice. "That's rather presumptuous. Would you have preferred I let him continue his harassment?" "No, but then accept the presumption as a necessary evil." He moved back toward his chair but didn't sit. "Former fiancé, that explains the desperation in your entrance." "I wasn't desperate. I was avoiding an unpleasant scene. By barricading yourself in a stranger's private rooms." Heat flooded her cheeks. "I didn't know anyone was in here." Evidently. His lips twitched. "Now, would you care to tell me why a former fiancé inspires such terror? Or shall I guess?" Before Imogen could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. "Your Grace?" A servant's muffled voice. "Lady Pemberton is asking after you, and there's a matter requiring your attention." "What sort of matter?" A weighted pause. Then, carefully. "The guests are talking, Your Grace, about the young lady seen entering your private study. Alone." The silence that followed pressed against Imogen's chest like a physical weight. She'd been seen. Entering the Duke's private rooms. Alone. At night. In the eyes of society, she was already ruined. "That's inconvenient," Soren observed, as though discussing weather. "Inconvenient?" Imogen's voice pitched higher. "Your Grace, this is catastrophic. If people believe we were alone together, we were alone together. For 10 minutes at most. Scandal rarely concerns itself with duration." He studied her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "The question is, what to do about it?" Imogen pressed her fingers to her temples. Her family's reputation was already threadbare. They couldn't survive another tear. Her younger sister Rosalind would lose any hope of a respectable match. Her mother's fragile health would shatter completely. "I have to leave," she said. "Now, before anyone else sees. Running will only confirm suspicions. You'll be branded guilty by flight. Then what do you suggest?" Soren was quiet for a breath of hesitation, calculation moving behind those pale gray eyes. "I suggest we give them something else to believe." "Meaning?" "We return to the ballroom together. I pay you marked attention for the rest of the evening. Tomorrow, I call on you at home. Within a week, Society believes we're courting. Imogen stared at him. Courting? You cannot be serious. It's the only path that salvages your reputation. If I'm pursuing you openly and honorably, no one can claim you were compromised. Merely that we sought privacy for innocent conversation. But we'd be lying to everyone. We'd be performing. His tone sharpened. Something tells me you understand the difference. She did. God help her, she did. How long would this performance last? 6 weeks. Long enough to establish the fiction. Then we discover we don't suit and part amicably. He tilted his head. You emerge with your reputation intact, possibly enhanced. Being courted by a duke does wonders for social standing. And what do you gain? That unreadable expression crossed his face again. My mother has been relentless about marriage. A failed courtship buys me time, demonstrates effort without requiring actual commitment. It was mad, utterly, completely mad. But the alternative was ruin, for her, for Rosalind, for everyone she loved. 6 weeks, Imogen said slowly. Then we end things cleanly. No complications. Agreed. And you'll behave with complete propriety throughout. This remains a performance only. Lady Imogen. His voice dropped, soft and faintly dangerous. I'm offering to save your reputation, not destroy it further. You have my word as a gentleman. She should ask for time to consider, should consult her family, weigh her options, behave like the sensible creature she'd always prided herself on being. Instead, she extended her hand. Then we have an arrangement, Your Grace. His fingers closed around hers. Warm. Strong. The contact sent an unexpected current through her that she immediately suppressed. Soren, he corrected. If we're courting, you should use my name. Soren. It felt strange on her tongue. And I shall call you Imogen. He released her hand and offered his arm. Now, shall we go give the gossips something to discuss? She placed her hand on his arm, acutely aware of the solid muscle beneath the fabric. 6 weeks of pretending to fall in love with a stranger. What could possibly go wrong? The ballroom fell silent the moment they appeared in the doorway. Imogen felt every gaze upon her, 100 eyes burning with curiosity and judgment. Her fingers tightened on Soren's arm. He responded by placing his free hand over hers with casual possession. Steady, he murmured. Let them look. That's the point. Lady Pemberton descended on them immediately, her round face cycling through confusion, concern, and barely concealed excitement. Your Grace. Lady Imogen. We were wondering where you'd both disappeared to. I was showing Lady Imogen my family's collection of maritime charts, Soren said smoothly. Her father was in shipping, as you may know. She has a keen interest in naval routes. It was such a perfectly mundane explanation that Imogen almost believed it herself. How fascinating, Lady Pemberton cooed, though her eyes sparkled with something sharper. I thought you never showed anyone your private collections, Your Grace. I make exceptions for exceptional company. The words hung in the air, weighted with implication. Around them, fans fluttered and whispers rippled through the crowd. Over the next hour, Soren played his role with devastating precision, his hand at her elbow, his body positioned protectively beside hers, every gesture calculated to signal one unmistakable message. Mine. People are staring, Imogen said through a fixed smile. Let them. The more they see us together, the more they'll accept the courtship as genuine. And if they don't believe it, they will. His confidence was absolute. I never pay attention to anyone. The fact that I'm paying attention to you will dominate conversation for weeks. She realized he was right. The Duke of Rendale, famous for his indifference to society, was suddenly monopolizing the attention of an impoverished nobody. It was irresistible gossip. You're skilled at this, she observed. Playing roles. Years of practice. Something shadowed his expression. Being a duke means performing from birth. The title is simply the costume. Before she could respond, a figure materialized from the crowd. Gervais, his composure restored, and his smile firmly in place. "Your Grace, Lady Imogen." He bowed with exaggerated courtesy. "I see you found new companionship this evening." Soren's arm tensed beneath her fingers, though his expression remained pleasant. "Mr. Montfort, I believed our conversation concluded." It had, but I couldn't help noticing how quickly you've taken Lady Imogen under your wing. Gervais' smile sharpened. "I do hope your intentions are honorable. She has a history of misunderstandings. I'd hate to see either of you disappointed." The implication was clear. Ugly. Calculated to wound. Imogen felt the old shame rising, the memories of discovering Gervais's gambling debts, his lies, and his expectation that her dowry would cover his mistakes. When she'd broken the engagement, he'd told everyone she was the one with secrets. But Soren simply smiled, a slow, dangerous curve. "Remarkably considerate of you, Montfort, worrying about disappointment when you're the one who caused it." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a pitch only Gervais could hear. "But let me be direct. Lady Imogen's happiness is now my concern, not yours. Approach her again, and I will ensure you never receive another invitation in polite society." He stepped back, expression pleasant once more. "Enjoy your evening." Gervais' face cycled through pale, red, and pale again. Without another word, he vanished into the crowd. Soren turned to Imogen. "Shall we dance?" She was trembling slightly, from anger or relief or something else entirely. "You didn't have to do that." "No," he said softly, "but I wanted to." He led her onto the floor as the orchestra struck up a waltz. His hand settled at her waist, warm through the silk of her gown, and they began to move. "They believe this is real," she murmured. "Good." His hand tightened briefly at her waist. "So should you, for the next 6 weeks. The more you believe it, the more convincing you'll be." The music swelled, and for one dizzying moment, Imogen let herself forget this was pretense. Let herself feel only the strength of his arms, the intensity of his gaze, the strange electricity crackling between them. Then the waltz ended, and reality returned. As they left the floor, Soren leaned close to her ear. "I'll call on you tomorrow at 11. Try not to look surprised when I arrive." He released her, bowed formally, and walked away. Imogen watched him disappear, her blood rushing faster than the dance could explain. She had the terrible suspicion she'd just made the most dangerous bargain of her life. He arrived at precisely 11, as promised. Imogen had spent the morning in anxious preparation, changing her dress twice and rearranging the drawing room furniture 3 times. Her mother watched these activities with growing bewilderment. "You're certain about this?" Helena Fairfax asked for the 4th time. "A duke, Imogen. The Duke of Rendale." "It's not what you think, Mother." "Then explain what it is." Imogen couldn't, not without revealing the scandal they'd narrowly avoided, so she simply said, "He's being kind. That's all." When Soren was announced, he entered the shabby drawing room as though it were a palace. He greeted her mother with perfect courtesy, complimented the faded wallpaper as charmingly traditional, and accepted tea in a chipped cup without a flicker of condescension. "I hoped Lady Imogen might accompany me for a walk," he said. "The weather is fine, and I find myself in need of intelligent conversation." Her mother practically shoved them out the door. They walked through the grounds near Hartwell, past the overgrown gardens and the pond that needed dredging. Soren offered his arm, and Imogen took it, intensely aware of how they must look together, the wealthy duke and the impoverished lady. "Your home has character," Soren observed. "That's a polite way of saying it's falling apart. I've seen estates in far worse condition owned by men with far more money. Your family maintains it with care, That matters more than gilt and marble." She glanced at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "You sound as though you mean that." "I do." He guided her around a muddy patch with unconscious grace. "My father believed wealth was meaningless without purpose. He taught me that the measure of a person isn't what they possess, but what they preserve and protect." He sounds like a wise man. He was. A shadow crossed Soren's face. "He died when I was 22. Some days I still reach for his counsel and find only silence." It was the most personal thing he'd shared. Imogen filed it away carefully, a small piece of the puzzle that was Soren Ashcroft. "My father is still with us," she said. "But since the business failed, he's become a ghost of himself. He sits in his study and stares at ledgers that haven't changed in 6 years. I think he's still trying to find the mistake that ruined us." "And did he find it?" "The mistake was trusting his partner." Bitterness crept into her voice. "A man who embezzled our profits for years and disappeared before anyone discovered the truth." Soren was quiet for a moment. "Is that why you were engaged to Montfort? To restore your family's fortunes?" "Partly." The admission stung. He was charming, attentive. My mother was thrilled. I thought perhaps I could learn to love him. What changed? I discovered he had gambling debts that exceeded my entire dowry. He didn't want a wife. He wanted a rescue. Imogen's jaw tightened. When I ended the engagement, he told everyone I was the one with shameful secrets, that I had deceived him about my family's circumstances. And society believed him. Society always believes the man with the prettier smile. She stopped walking and faced him. "Why are you doing this? Truly. You could have let the scandal ruin me. It would have been easier." Soren studied her for a weighted pause, something unreadable moving behind his silver-gray eyes. "Because I've spent my entire life watching people destroy each other for sport. Watching the powerful crush the vulnerable simply because they can." His voice was low, intense. "Last night, I saw a woman cornered by a man who clearly frightened her, and I decided I was tired of watching. So, I'm a charitable project." "No." The word was sharp. "You're someone who deserved better than the hand fate dealt you. I'm simply evening the odds." They stood in the lane, sunlight filtering through the trees, and Imogen felt something shift between them, something she refused to name. "We should return," she said finally. "My mother will worry." "Of course." He offered his arm again, and this time, when she took it, the contact felt different. More natural. More dangerous. 6 weeks, she reminded herself. Then this ends. But as they walked back toward Hartwell, she wondered if 6 weeks would be enough, or far too long. Their first major public appearance came 5 days later, at the Pemberton garden party. Imogen wore her best summer dress, white muslin with blue ribbons that Rosalind had refreshed that morning. When Soren's carriage arrived to collect her, his expression suggested approval. "You look lovely," he said as he handed her up. "You sound surprised." "I sound appreciative. There's a difference." The garden party was a glittering affair. The Pemberton lawns transformed into a wonderland of silt canopies and silver refreshments. Everyone who mattered in 3 counties was present, which meant everyone was watching when the Duke of Rendale arrived with Lady Imogen Fairfax on his arm. "Breathe," Soren murmured as they entered. "You look like you're approaching execution." "I feel like I am." "Remember, we're madly in love. Try to appear as though my company doesn't fill you with existential dread." Despite herself, she laughed. His answering smile was warm, genuine, and completely disarming. For a moment, she forgot they were performing, forgot everyone was watching, forgot everything except the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he was truly amused. Then Lady Ashworth descended upon them, and the performance began in earnest. Your Grace, Lady Imogen. What a delightful surprise. Lady Ashworth was a formidable matron, with a talent for extracting information. "We've been simply dying to know more about this courtship. It's all anyone can discuss. There's little to tell, Soren said smoothly. Lady Imogen and I share intellectual interests. The rest followed naturally. But so suddenly, no one even knew you were acquainted. The best things often happen without warning. He gazed at Imogen with an expression of such tender regard that her breath caught. Sometimes you meet someone and simply know. Know what, Your Grace? That everything before was merely waiting. Lady Ashworth actually sighed. Around them, fans fluttered with increased vigor. Imogen should have been impressed by his performance. Instead, she found herself wishing, just for a moment, that he meant it. The afternoon progressed smoothly. They strolled the gardens together, took tea beneath a canopy, and made polite conversation with dozens of curious guests. Through it all, Soren was attentive without being suffocating, charming without being obsequious. He's good at this, Imogen thought. Too good. How many faces did this man show the world? Then she spotted Gervais. He stood across the lawn, champagne glass in hand, watching them with a knowing smirk. He didn't approach, didn't speak, simply watched, his gaze tracking their every movement with predatory patience. The weight of his attention made her skin crawl. Ignore him, Soren said, following her gaze. That's what he wants. To unsettle you. It's working. Then we'll give him something else to watch. Soren's hand found hers, fingers intertwining with casual intimacy. Smile at me as though I've just said something delightful. What if you haven't? Then pretend. You're supposed to be madly in love with me, remember? She forced a smile, though her chest had tightened with anxiety. This is exhausting. I know. His thumb traced circles on her palm, a gesture that should have been purely performative, but somehow felt genuine. But you're doing brilliantly. A few more hours, and we can escape. They stayed until the shadows lengthened, playing their roles with increasing ease. By the time Soren handed her into the carriage for the journey home, Imogen's face ached from forced smiling. But as they pulled away, she glanced back to see Gervais still watching. His expression promised this wasn't over. The weeks that followed transformed everything. What began as performance slowly became something Imogen couldn't define, something that felt increasingly real with every passing day. Soren called on her each morning without fail. They walked through meadows and debated philosophy. They attended concerts and argued about composers. They took tea in her mother's drawing room, and he listened to Rosalind's shy questions about London with genuine patience, never once making the girl feel foolish for her curiosity. Small things accumulated, details Imogen filed away like treasures. He remembered she preferred her tea with honey rather than sugar, and began requesting it that way before she could ask. He brought her books he thought she'd enjoy, obscure volumes of Greek philosophy and natural history that couldn't be found in their small village. When he noticed her shivering at an evening music hall, he draped his coat around her shoulders without comment, as though protecting her comfort was simply instinct. One afternoon, while walking through the woods near Hartwell, they discovered a ruined folly overgrown with ivy. How romantic, Imogen said dryly. Crumbling architecture. Very poetic. Shall I compose an ode? Soren ducked beneath a stone archway. Something about the impermanence of grandeur and the persistence of nature? Please don't. I've heard your poetry. It's dreadful. He placed a hand over his heart. You wound me. I speak only truth. Then I shall have to find other ways to impress you. He turned, and his expression was suddenly serious. Imogen, there's something I should tell you. Her chest tightened. That sounds ominous. It's not. Or rather, I hope it isn't. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd learned indicated genuine uncertainty. My mother wishes to meet you. Properly. She's hosting a dinner this Friday, and has specifically requested your attendance. The Dowager Duchess. Imogen felt her stomach drop. That's terrifying. She's formidable, Soren admitted. But she's also perceptive. She'll see through our performance in minutes if we're not careful. Then we'll be careful. It's not that simple. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the individual shades of gray in his eyes. My mother has spent 30 years reading people. She'll know immediately if what she's seeing isn't genuine. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting... He hesitated, something vulnerable flickering across his features. I'm suggesting that perhaps we don't need to pretend as much as we once did. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Soren, forget I said anything. He stepped back, his composure sliding into place. Friday, 7 o'clock. I'll send a carriage. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her alone in the ruined folly with her spinning thoughts. That night, Imogen lay awake for hours. She thought about the way Soren looked at her when he believed she wasn't watching, the way his hand lingered on hers a moment longer than necessary, the way her name sounded in his voice, soft and careful, as though it mattered. She thought about the arrangement they'd made, 6 weeks of pretense, a performance to save her reputation. But somewhere along the way, she'd stopped performing. She was falling in love with him. The realization struck like lightning, illuminating everything she'd been refusing to see. She loved his dry humor and his hidden kindness. She loved the way he defended her without hesitation and challenged her thinking without condescension. She loved the glimpses of vulnerability he allowed her to see, the real man beneath the aristocratic reserve. But loving him changed nothing. In 2 weeks, their arrangement would end. He would return to his life of wealth and obligation, and she would return to hers, hopefully with her reputation intact and her heart only slightly broken. Whatever she felt, she needed to bury it. Some things were simply not meant to be. The Dowager Duchess of Rendale was exactly as terrifying as Imogen had feared. Cordelia Ashcroft presided over her dining table like a general surveying a battlefield, silver hair immaculate, diamonds glinting at her throat. Her eyes, the same shade as her son's, missed nothing. So, she said after the first course was cleared, you're the young woman who's captured my son's attention. I'm not certain captured is accurate, Your Grace. No. One elegant eyebrow rose. He visits you daily, defends your honor publicly, speaks of you with an animation I haven't witnessed in years. Her smile was knowing. That sounds rather captured to me. Across the table, Soren was studying his wineglass with intense concentration. Your son has been very kind, Imogen said carefully. Soren is many things. Kind is not typically among them. Cordelia set down her fork. He's been different these past weeks. Lighter, almost happy. I wondered what could possibly account for such a transformation. Her gaze sharpened. Now I see. The evening progressed in much the same vein, Cordelia probing, Imogen deflecting, Soren growing increasingly tense. By the time dessert arrived, Imogen's nerves were frayed to breaking. When the ladies withdrew to the drawing room, leaving Soren to his port, Cordelia's interrogation intensified. You're not what I expected, the Dowager said. What did you expect? Someone prettier, someone sillier, someone easier to dismiss. Cordelia studied her with unsettling intensity. You have intelligence, spine. You don't simper or flatter. I can see why he's drawn to you. Your Grace, I know this arrangement began unconventionally. The words landed like stones. I know about the scandal you narrowly avoided at Pemberton Manor. I know what my son offered, and why you accepted. Imogen's blood ran cold. How I have eyes everywhere. It's how I've survived this long. Cordelia's expression softened unexpectedly. But I also know my son. And whatever this began as, it's become something else entirely. He looks at you the way his father once looked at me. He's performing. We both are. Are you? The question was gentle, devastating. Tell me, Lady Imogen, when you look at my son, What do you see?" The answer rose unbidden. "Everything. I see everything I never knew I wanted." But she couldn't say that, couldn't admit it, even to herself. "I see a good man," she managed. "One who deserves better than a pretend courtship with an impoverished nobody." "Perhaps," Cordelia rose, signaling the conversation's end. "Or perhaps you're both too stubborn to recognize what's right in front of you." Later, after the carriage ride home filled with silence, Soren walked her to her door. "My mother said something to upset you," he observed. "I saw it in your face when you returned to the drawing room." "She said many things. Your mother is direct. That's one word for it." He stepped closer, his expression intent. "Imogen, these past weeks, don't." The word emerged sharper than she intended. "Please, don't say anything that makes this harder than it needs to be." "Harder?" He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. "What if I want it to be harder? What if I want—" "What?" Her voice cracked. "What do you want, Soren?" "You." The word was raw, unvarnished. "I want you, not as a performance, not as an arrangement, as something real." She closed her eyes against the moisture gathering there. "You don't know what you're asking." "I know exactly what I'm asking." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I'm asking you to take a chance, to believe that what we've built is worth keeping. And if it isn't, if this is just proximity and pretense, and we've confused the fiction for reality, then at least we'll have tried." He lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "I'd rather fail at something real than succeed at something false." God, she wanted to say yes, wanted to fall into him and let the consequences sort themselves out. But fear held her frozen. "2 more weeks," she whispered. "Let's finish the arrangement as planned. If what you feel is real, it will survive the separation." Pain flashed across his face. "And if you decide it isn't real, then I'll have saved us both from a terrible mistake." She pulled away and fled inside before he could see the tears finally falling. The final days of their arrangement passed in tense silence. Imogen and Soren maintained their public facade, but privately, they circled each other like wounded animals, neither willing to speak of what had passed between them on the dowager's doorstep. Then, 3 days before the arrangement was meant to end, the letter arrived. Imogen recognized Gervais' handwriting immediately, the elegant script that had once written her poetry, and now made her stomach turn. "My dearest Imogen, I hope this finds you well, though I suspect it won't for long. I've been asking questions, gathering information. The servants at Pemberton Manor were particularly forthcoming, once properly compensated. Did you think no one would notice that your grand romance began the exact night you were caught fleeing into the Duke's private rooms? That your courtship started mere minutes after what should have been ruinous scandal? I have statements, observations, a compelling narrative about an arrangement of convenience designed to save your reputation. I'm hosting a dinner party tomorrow evening. Several influential families will attend. I intend to share what I've discovered, unless you meet me beforehand to discuss alternatives. Return to me. Become my wife as you should have been years ago. Or watch everything burn. Yours always, Gervais." The letter trembled in her hands. He knew. He would destroy her unless she gave him what he wanted. Herself, bound to him in the prison of marriage she'd escaped years ago. She should tell Soren, let him handle this with his authority and influence. But part of her wondered if this was fate intervening. Punishment for building hope on a foundation of lies. She would go to Gervais, offer him money, promise silence. Anything to keep Soren's name out of his poisonous mouth. Maybe she didn't deserve happiness. Maybe she should let the scandal break and spare Soren the burden of her. The thought hollowed her out. She was still clutching the letter when Rosalind found her an hour later, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. "Imogen." Her sister's face paled with alarm. What's happened? Imogen looked at Rosalind's frightened eyes and felt the last of her resolve crumble. I need your help, she said. I need to tell you everything. And outside, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, dark with the promise of ruin. Soren arrived at Hartwell the next morning to find Rosalind pacing the entrance hall, her young face streaked with tears. Where is she? He demanded. Rosalind thrust the letter into his hands. She went to meet him. She said she had to handle it herself, that she couldn't drag you into her scandal. Soren read the letter in seconds. His expression went cold as death. When did she leave? An hour ago. I tried to stop her, but... He was already gone, his carriage racing toward Gervais Montfort's residence. He found them in the parlor. Imogen stood with her back against the wall, face ashen, but chin raised in defiance. Gervais lounged in a chair, wearing the smile of a man who believed he'd already won. Your Grace, Gervais didn't bother rising. Come to collect your pretend sweetheart? Get away from her. Soren's voice could have frozen hellfire. Now. Or what? Gervais rose slowly, savoring the moment. I know everything about your arrangement. By tomorrow, everyone who matters will know your grand romance was nothing but a desperate scheme. Soren, don't. Imogen's voice was barely audible. Let me face the consequences. This is my fault. No. The scandal will destroy you too. I don't care. He crossed the room and took her hands. I don't care about scandal or reputation or what anyone thinks. I care about you. You shouldn't. Too late. His grip tightened. I love you, Imogen. Not the arrangement. Not the performance. You. Every stubborn, brilliant, impossible part of you. Her vision blurred with unshed tears. You can't mean that. I've never meant anything more. He turned to face Gervais, positioning himself between them. Publish your accusations. Tell whoever you like. Scandal loses its power when the people involved refuse to be ashamed. Gervais' smile faltered. You're bluffing. Try me. Soren's voice was deadly soft. I'm going to marry this woman, not to salvage reputation, but because she is the most extraordinary person I have ever known, and nothing you do will change that. He turned back to Imogen, his eyes blazing with fierce tenderness. That is, if she'll have me. Not as arrangement, not as convenience, as my wife, my partner, my equal in everything that matters. Imogen looked at him, this man who had defended her, challenged her, seen through every wall she'd built. This man willing to face ruin rather than lose her. She stopped being afraid. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. He gathered her close and kissed her, deep and desperate and absolutely real. You're both mad, Gervais spat. This will destroy you. Soren broke the kiss just long enough to respond. Then we'll be destroyed together. Now leave, before I forget I'm a gentleman. Gervais fled. In the silence that followed, Imogen laughed through her tears. We're really doing this. We're really doing this. Soren pressed his forehead to hers. No more pretending. No more arrangements. Just us. Just us, she agreed. And for the first time in years, she believed in happy endings. They married 3 weeks later in the small chapel at Hartwell. It wasn't a grand society wedding. No hundreds of guests, no elaborate decorations, no spectacle designed to impress. Just family, a handful of trusted friends, and a vicar who kept dabbing at his eyes throughout the ceremony. Imogen wore her mother's wedding gown, carefully restored and altered. The ivory silk caught the morning light, and when she walked down the aisle toward Soren, she saw his composure shatter completely. You're crying, she whispered as she reached him. Absolutely not. He cleared his throat. It's dust. There's no dust. Then it's joy. Same thing. She laughed, and he smiled, and the vicar began. The vows felt different this time. Not words performed for show, but promises meant with every fiber of her being. When Soren slid the ring onto her finger, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, matching the ribbons she'd worn when they met, his hand trembled slightly. I had it commissioned the week after the ball, he admitted in a low voice. Even then, I think I knew. Knew what? That you were going to change everything? After the ceremony, the wedding breakfast, and the tearful embraces, Soren drew her aside into the garden. I have something for you. He handed her a leather folder. Inside were documents dense with legal language. What is this? Freedom. His voice was serious. A trust in your name. Funds to maintain Hartwell, provide for your family, ensure Rosalind's future. It's yours regardless of what happens between us. Soren, I didn't marry you for money. I know, that's exactly why I'm giving it to you. He cupped her face in his hands. I never want you to wonder if you stayed out of necessity. This ensures you're free to stay, or leave, because you choose to. Her eyes glistened. You impossible man. You're impossible man. He kissed her gently. Forever, if you'll have me. Forever, she whispered against his lips. That night, in their chamber, they finally stopped performing. Every touch was honest. Every whispered word was true. And when he held her afterward, tracing patterns on her shoulder in the candlelight, Imogen felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. No regrets, he murmured. Not a single one. She turned to face him. You? Only that I wasted years being alone when I could have been searching for you. You found me eventually. You found me. His smile was soft, unguarded. Bursting through my door like a woman possessed. Best thing that ever happened to my solitude. She kissed him, and they didn't sleep until dawn. 4 years later. Theodore Ashcroft, put down that caterpillar immediately. The 3-year-old future Duchess looked up at her father with enormous gray eyes and tightened her grip on the fuzzy creature. She's my friend. She belongs in the garden, not in grandmother's teacup. From across the lawn, Imogen stifled laughter as she bounced their 1-year-old son, Marcus, on her hip. Having difficulties, darling? She called. Soren shot her a look of fond exasperation. Your daughter has inherited your talent for chaos. She's only mine when she's causing trouble. She's always causing trouble. Therefore, she's always yours. Theodora chose that moment to release the caterpillar into the grass and launch herself at her father's legs. He scooped her up with practiced ease. Later that evening, with the children asleep and the house quiet, Imogen and Soren sat together in the library, their favorite room, filled with books they'd collected together. Do you remember the night we met? Imogen asked, curled against his side. When a mad woman invaded my sanctuary and refused to apologize? His voice was warm with teasing. Vaguely. I was terrified. You were magnificent. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Absolutely improper, completely inappropriate, and utterly unforgettable. And now look at us. Indeed. His arms tightened around her. Married. Children. Respectable. Respectable is generous. I hear we're still considered scandalous in certain circles. The best people usually are. She smiled. The gossip had faded eventually, as it always did. Gervais had disappeared to the continent, chased by debts and the wreckage of his own reputation. Her family thrived. Rosalind had married a kind vicar last spring and was expecting her first child. I love you, she said, in case I haven't mentioned it recently. You mentioned it this morning. He tilted her chin up. But I'll never tire of hearing it. Good, because I intend to keep saying it for the rest of our lives. He kissed her, slow and sweet and full of promise. That, he said against her lips, sounds like an excellent arrangement. She laughed and kissed him back, and thought about how strange life was, how the worst night of her existence had led to the best years of her life. She'd fled from her past and stumbled into her future. And she wouldn't change a single terrifying, wonderful moment of it. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this journey. If this story made your heart race, brought tears to your eyes, or reminded you that love often finds us when we least expect it, please show your support by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing with fellow lovers of romantic tales. Your support means everything and keeps these stories alive. Stay tuned. Another sweeping romance awaits you at the end of this video. Click, listen, and let your heart be carried away once more. From the depths of our hearts, thank you for being here